Hey, listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in, or whatever is the vernacular for podcasts these days, in this bonus episode or extended episode of my interview with Karthik. I poured myself the remaining Kraken rum and listened to this last little bit, and I must admit, I'm a little spellbound. You know, we touch upon a few things, but I feel like this is something that people need to listen to and think about in terms of how they interact with people, how they share who they are, how their existence matters. In that regard, I want people to know that there is help out there. It's the suicide prevention hotline, and it is 1-800-273-8255 or 1-800-273-TALK. And I need people to think about that. If you're ever thinking, or you just need someone to talk to, seriously, reach out. Here is the excerpt from the interview that it couldn't fit with the episode, but I really feel like people need to hear it. So here it is. Enjoy. This is Champaign is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champaign is Also a Band podcast is a member of the Champaign Showers Podcast Network. So
yeah, I'm like that.
That's
too.
about my my speed.
Your workflow.
Yes. Well, and most of my podcasts take about usually represent about 10 hours of work,
and we
easily.
appreciate that. Just for
you know, that's fine. I mean, I don't need praise. Actually, I'm still trying to figure out a way that I can like still have an impact, but nobody knows that it's me, and that I can just completely disappear.
You're not even
this
remotely the first person that I've talked to in the scene that has felt that way, and I relate.
But, you know, I mean, I don't want to exist without a purpose, but I also would like the ability to not exist.
That's the complications of things like doing music in a solo context, because there's some times when I'm like, yes, I need to make the sounds so arrogant, but like the politics of caring about myself in a North American culture that hasn't always been super thrilled with me caring about myself. And like, I can't really do that while also being the man behind the curtain necessarily.
Yeah.
So then I go all in. I'm like, well, I'm going to insert myself into these other spaces within the performance area, because I might as well be. Yeah, no, there's an appeal theoretically to just somehow not be invoking the politics of my 6'5" plus body being in a physical space.
Wow. Have you always been tall, or just
one point,
ever since you grew up, you've been that tall?
At one point, I wasn't in high school, so I wasn't super tall. The last 4 to 5 inches kind of came with that into early collegiate times.
Oh my.
Whenever I talk about being a child, I always just say, like, yeah, when I was small, and then I add this because, you know, I don't want to step on everyone's good times. Like, if you want to imagine me, like, long-haired and bearded as a baby, like, go ahead. Like, I don't want to be, like, too jarring. If you need, like, the signifier of that to be me, cool.
Yeah, but
so I mean, there's a visibility and connotations to that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, if I was white and this hairy and this size, it wouldn't have the same reaction. It draws attention, and at certain points I have to just embrace that, I think.
So how do you embrace that?
By being really direct with when I'm going to be, and this isn't necessarily literal, but when I'm going to be quiet versus when I'm going to be loud. Like it can't be just for the sake of it.
I see.
Because I'm drawing more attention on top of the attention that was already going to be there. And I have mixed feelings about that. I've different relationships with that over time. I can't say it's 100%. Like, I always feel like pretty freaking great. Everyone's like seeing, like, sometimes it's like, I just want to like melt into the trees that are somehow inside this building that, oh, look at that. There's a tree. I'm in the tree now. You can't look at me. We're all just going to see this thing and I'm not going to be there. And that's cool because we can enjoy this other thing without me being remotely there. And then at some point, going back to the whole notion where it's like, yeah, but also there's a communication of love and appreciation that's like, oh, I'm an identifiable person and I'm there. Even if you don't know anything about me, you know my sincerity of presence.
Yeah.
And I did, when I was doing the original Solar Shadows solo stuff, there was a trio that wasn't called a trio, and then I came back as a solo thing of that, and then more recently I've been doing that as an improvised trio again. But in the solo times, which may happen again at some point, I was using a typewriter, and I was contact miking the typewriter and running it through some of the same effects but in a different configuration. And so I was using my rhythms that I was typing and then messing with the hog to generate pitched tones out of that in relation to the words that I had already decided I was going to type. And then when things reach their looped crescendo or like undulating like crackle, because there'd be pitch but there'd also be dissonance, I'd pull out the piece of paper and I'd start reading it over that. And one of the things that I have been saying in some of those sets since 2008, depending on what the letter was even our absences communicate. The specific line being, even our absences communicate. Karthik's at the show. He's always at the show. If he's not here, there must be something wrong. So this has been a thing about me for a while.
I see. So I'm going to just dig into this, even though it isn't particularly about the scene. But so the last, and I apologize because these probably haven't been your last two shows, but the last two shows that you have performed at that I've been at, you've mentioned, and we can drop it, we can not pick it up. You mentioned that there was a promise, that there was a trio, that there was that you,
two people in particular,
that you were that you were going to be performing this kind of thing together. And
well, we weren't performing it together. It's just like, can I ask you a counter question that might anchor my answer a little bit better?
Sure.
Did you talk to anyone before you formed this podcast? Did you make a commitment to anyone verbally?
Not particularly, but it was, let's just say it was suggested to me.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, what the heck? Why don't I at least try it, at the very least?
So in this case, there were two people that I had conversations, multiple conversations in one case, a few conversations in the other case, which I was lovingly egged into, like, going ahead and putting some of these ideas into form. And the way I grew up, at least with my mom's side, is that your word means something.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times people hedge and they say, well, I didn't promise anything. But then that makes your word the rest of the time not mean anything.
Right.
So effectively, my word was that I was going to go for it and actually play music. It wasn't necessarily going to be solo, but I was going to put these song ideas out. And one of them was a dear friend of mine that got me into college radio in the first place. And the other was the guitar player / singer of honestly one of the greatest bands that have ever occurred, let alone out of the Midwest, let alone specifically Iowa. But he was living in Normal, Illinois in the later stage of things, and we became little, friends at that point. And so, yeah, like he even listened to my college radio show sometimes and stuff like that. But yeah. But now neither of them will be able to hear these things, so it's kind of important for me to kind of keep my word with it. There's a lot of times when people go, oh, I'm going to, like, this has a shelf life, I'm going to kind of do this for however long. I'm convinced that as long as I play music, the project that I came in with today, regardless of what form it takes, will still be going as long as I can literally play music.
So
And so a lot of times you've seen, like, I invoke the fact that I gave my word.
Right, but may I just go
ahead.
traipsing over what seems difficult to say is when you say that they will not be able to listen to your work.
2002 in the first case. If I get this wrong, I'll be so annoyed. But I believe 2003 in the other case. Gone. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
It's all right. I study... The thing about medicine is that people don't come into that scenario in their best condition, necessarily. So, you study dissolution, decay, entropy, in a sense.
Yeah.
More than anything else. And so when things are sudden, that is a very specific kind of jarring. And there's other kinds of, like, within the medical profession, there's certain kinds of specialties that kind of fixate more on those jarring things.
Right.
And, like, I get that. But when you're at a point when you're not necessarily specializing in one of those, like, that makes the sharp, young instances take on a really, like, not to be glib, but when you know a certain resolution and a compositional sequence is going to happen, but then that last whatever doesn't happen, it's like that. Right. Because I mean, maybe you don't. I definitely am a forward-thinking person. I think about, like, my plans and the kinds of things we're going to do, and then just it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like
fine.
I don't. No. Yeah. That's. I mean, I feel, but I'm concerned about the way that you feel about it. Because I
sometimes I don't.
I feel like we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't feel like I am bringing as much as I should be, because I'm imposing my own criteria on what I'm doing in, for example, this project. Because
you feel how it reflects upon the promise you made?
Yeah, because, like, what I came in with today isn't what I was playing in 2005, 2006. But am I doing the most with what I'm doing right now?
Isn't that...
Oh, yeah.
Am I expending that battery is what I like to think of. It's like...
what am I bringing to someone else? What am I bringing to myself? Can this be sustainable? And it hasn't always been sustainable. That's what you're hearing right now. There were stretches in which I was playing every show like it was my last show. And it was just kind of wrecking me.
And was that... I know that we've touched upon that with some interviews that I've done with you in the past, but also just... Is this like our... I know that you mentioned, and I don't know if this was something that was just kind of pushed aside, but like it was the desire. You're speaking of the desire to not. You're like, it's not worth it to actually perform out, not necessarily your existence.
No.
Okay,
but like
I just
whether
I feel like,
to just really, because like maybe some of those pedals have been on the ground on a table that got literally upended because I thought maybe it was 100% my last show, and I'd given everything I could, and I literally played for hours at a basement that currently still exists, but I wasn't sure if it was going to still exist at the time because the original proprietors were moving away, as does happen with the house show,
right.
And it was the only place where I felt 100% safe to play.
Okay.
There's still, like, if you see some of the white paint on some of the cables and stuff like that, that's literally from that show in 2010.
Okay.
And
good.
So sometimes it's just, that's it. Like, I've expended everything that I can. I've given all of myself that I can. Maybe I just settle in and do nothing music-wise.
So as long I'm just trying to clarify that what we're talking about is more of the death of your performance and not
dreams,
the death
maybe.
of you. But I know that there's a fine line there.
There is.
But
at what point?
I just want to make sure that.
At what point do I end, and what point does the art begin?
Yeah. I mean,
and that is the question, right? Of self.
Yeah. I just in case some of this makes it in, I just want to make sure that people aren't specifically concerned about you. Is all I'm just
sure.
I mean, granted, we should all be concerned about each other all the time. Yeah. But I mean, I hope that I don't need to clarify what I'm implying.
Appreciate
you
caring, though. Yeah.
It's just very important that that's understood.
Yeah.
And I mean,
but with that framed in mind, at any given time, my best versus my worst. At my best, I have 50 plus more years of whatever in me.
Right.
At my worst, we all have our downs. At my worst, the last thing that I have booked on the calendar is the last of whatever that I do. And then I just literally give up. But I'm not the person that gives up. So that invokes a mini crisis.
Yeah, you're putting into words some of the things that I've mulled around that couldn't seem to. That idea of trying to constantly put that one next thing in front of you.
Because let me put it this way. Someone, just to anchor this, Brian passing away after a car accident. Matt, as far as I understand, dying in his bed. They didn't choose to give up on anything. So at a certain point, who am I to quit anything that I can keep doing that gives me anything, that gives someone else anything? Because sometimes that little bit that you can wrench out and give someone else might change everything.
That's...
And once you play music live for over a decade, over 14 years or something like that, getting close to, things start to happen. It starts to have an impact on small pockets of people that proceed to interact with other people and give sincerely to each other. There's at least a couple of couples that still exist that have like overtly noted that they met each other at one of my stupid shows, and like they're still together and things like that, let alone everyone that they've interacted with.
True.
So it's like, so it's what's weird about doing what I do, which I could decide to. I love pop, I love rock, I love all these kinds of music that you see me at. But do I have anything to contribute to it? And I'm not always sure. So then that leads to a weird bottleneck in which I'm trying to find this one person. Oh, hopefully it's more than one, right?
You're right.
That I don't know is going to resonate with what I'm doing.
I don't know.
And they're invisible until all of a sudden they're visible and they're right up next to me that day or the next day at a coffee shop sometimes. And then in a hush voice, like, I really like what you did at the IMC. It was really beautiful. I'm like, thank you. And that's a weird uphill challenge when it's like, these aren't the chords that I've come to associate in this sequence at this rhythm that resemble other things, yet have words that specifically worked for me at this time. Like, so that unanchors the criteria of whether it's reaching anyone.
Right.
If you have a painting of a landscape and someone goes, that's a beautiful landscape. Like, I really like what you did with the tree, with the mountain, and that just little wisp that suggests a bird, but it's not necessarily a bird. They can articulate that. With relatively abstract music. Where are you going to anchor to? What are you going to comment on? There's like this proto-language thing that happens with a lot of people where they sincerely want to talk about it, but they don't know where to begin. But then that risks the creator feeling alone, whether or not that's reasonable. So then anchoring to things like promises becomes a little bit more important.
Yeah.
Because that controls for the inherent human wavering.
Yeah.
Because even if I market myself as that guy that doesn't give up, we all have oscillations. We all have highs. We all have lows. And sometimes your gut doesn't know a darn thing because it forgets 13 years. So there's like two things that I'm doing at this point almost every set.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't say that stuff this time at the beginning of this because it wasn't a full set. But then the other points, though, I think I've talked to you about this before, but obviously I haven't talked about it in this podcast. I start with loops from a previous recording, from a previous performance. I bring the past up. I come to terms with it. Its boundaries, its shape. And then, with one hit, clear it. And we're doing this thing now.
Yeah, I always wondered where you got that from. Yeah.
So sometimes there have been, for example, just to anchor it, sometimes there have been the loops from a songwriter Snake Pit at Loose Cobra, and I have a show a few days later, and I still have those on there.
Them some pedals you got there. Dang. I don't know.
So, I mean, it's a compact flash card. They're WAV files. So if I really want to, I could just like offload it and then practice some other loops and like put it back on. But Sometimes I just practice raw without looping to discreetly keep those on there without any moving. But that's I'm not saying that's going to be forever, but that's become the ritual now. It's a centering thing.
You know, it's funny is that I feel like most people that listen to experimental music will think, ugh, they're just fucking around. They're not doing anything. And then I can't think of I can't think of any music that is more intentional and is more like specific to intention. How do I put that? It's just like it's like you're totally Mary Poppinsing all of everything. Like everything's got its place, and everything is, you know, there is a reason for everything, and it's not like it's like we don't waste anything. You know, and I just realized that I said Mary Poppinsing.
No, whenever it ends up happening, I think you've delighted my mom very much.
What?
My mom, like, just with the Mary Poppins reference, you've probably delighted her quite a bit.
I was like, wait, she listens to the podcast?
I mean, eventually she'll probably hear this.
Oh, that's great.
Oh yeah, I saw the sequel with her, and she had seen the original in the theater.
Excellent.
She likes Emily Blunt, so you know.
Oh yeah.
So then obviously like Mary Poppins also. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you refer to effectively to her sonny boy as like Mary Poppinsing.
Oh.
Right.
Well, it's certainly a spoonful of sugar. That's for sure. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Sven, reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live. You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good. Studio South Speaker on the inside.